Take a deep breath and let it out slowly. Notice the weight of your body against the bed, the texture of the sheets, the sound of your own breathing. There is nowhere else you need to be right now. As you listen, there will be periods of silence and soft music. These pauses are invitations to let go even more deeply and allow your thoughts to drift away. Our story begins on the afternoon of November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. In the Pacific Northwest, clouds often hang low and rain comes and goes with little warning. On that day, a man in his mid-40s, described later as nondescript and about 6 feet tall, walked up to the counter at Portland International Airport. He wore a dark business suit, a white shirt, a black tie with a mother-of-pearl tie pin, and a neatly pressed trench coat. His hair was cut short. He carried a black attaché case. In a deliberate, calm voice, he purchased a one-way ticket for Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 to Seattle. The ticket cost $20, a reminder of a different era of air travel. The airline clerk asked for his name. He gave it as Dan Cooper, which later turned out to be an alias. A local reporter misheard the name and referred to him as D.B. Cooper, the name that would enter folklore. With his ticket in hand, he joined the other passengers, 36 in all, waiting to board the Boeing 727 for the short hop north to Seattle. Flight 305 was a routine flight, 30 minutes in the air. The Boeing 727 was a smaller jetliner known for its rear passenger stairs and a design that allowed access to the fuselage from the outside. At approximately 2:50 p.m., the boarding process began. Dan Cooper took seat 18C near the middle of the cabin. Witnesses later recalled that nothing about him stood out. He wore dark sunglasses and quietly smoked a cigarette, allowed on airplanes at the time. Soon after takeoff, he flagged down a flight attendant and ordered a bourbon and soda. He paid cash and chatted politely. The flight climbed toward 10,000 feet, and passengers settled into magazines and small talk, unaware of the plan unfolding in aisle 18. Shortly after the aircraft leveled off, the man in seat 18C handed flight attendant Florence Schaffner a folded note. At first, she assumed it was a phone number from a business traveler. She smiled politely and placed it into her pocket without reading it. Cooper leaned forward and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner opened the note and read the words, "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I will use it if necessary. I want you to sit next to me." Her heart rate quickened, but his demeanor was calm. Florence sat down next to him. Cooper cracked open his attaché case just enough to show her 8 red cylinders, wires, and a battery, convincingly resembling a bomb. He then dictated his demands: $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, 2 main chutes and 2 reserves, and a fuel truck to refuel the plane upon landing in Seattle. He instructed that the money be delivered when the plane landed, and that, if his demands were not met, he would detonate the device. He also requested that the plane not be surrounded by police when it landed. His tone remained even and polite, and he wore dark sunglasses throughout the conversation. Schaffner relayed the demands to the cockpit. Captain William A. Scott and First Officer Bob Radajak contacted Seattle-Tacoma Air Traffic Control, who in turn notified law enforcement. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, having no precedent for a skyjacking of this nature, quickly mobilized. They understood that cooperating with the hijackers' instructions could be the safest way to protect the passengers. Northwest Orient's president approved the ransom, and the FBI arranged to gather $200,000 in sequentially numbered $20 bills so the serial numbers could later be tracked. 4 parachutes were also secured, 2 front-mounted reserve chutes and 2 backpack-style main chutes. Inside the cabin, passengers remained unaware of the gravity of the situation. The flight crew told them there were mechanical problems and that the flight would circle until landing clearance was obtained. For 2 hours, the plane orbited the Seattle area, burning fuel to reach a safe landing weight. Through those long loops in the sky, Dan Cooper remained composed. He smoked another cigarette, ordered a second drink, and chatted cordially with flight attendants. He paid his bar tab and even offered one of the flight attendants the change. At one point, he remarked that Seattle had a beautiful view at night. Nothing in his demeanor suggested panic or aggression. At 5:39 p.m., 2 hours after takeoff, Flight 305 landed safely at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Law enforcement and airline personnel kept their distance, per Cooper's instructions. The aircraft taxied to a remote area of the tarmac, and the cabin lights were dimmed to dissuade snipers. Through the windows, passengers could see a fuel truck and 2 men carrying supplies. Florence Schaffner and another flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, acted as intermediaries, relaying Cooper's instructions via cockpit interphone. An airline representative approached the plane and delivered a knapsack containing the $200,000 ransom and a stack of parachutes. Cooper meticulously examined the money before letting the representative leave. He then allowed the 36 passengers and 2 flight attendants to deplane in exchange for the ransom. Only Captain Scott, First Officer Radajak, Flight Engineer Harold E. Anderson, and Flight Attendant Tina Mucklow remained. As the door closed again, the plane sat motionless on the rainy tarmac. Outside, law enforcement could only watch as one of the most remarkable heists in history continued. With the passengers safe, Dan Cooper turned his attention to the flight crew. He told them to set a course for Mexico City. He specified that they maintain an altitude under 10,000 feet and a speed not exceeding 200 knots. He wanted the landing gear down and the cabin unpressurized, and he insisted that the rear door remain unlocked with the air stair extended on takeoff. When the pilots explained that the air stair could not be extended while on the ground, he agreed to have it extended after takeoff. Fuel stops were arranged in Reno, Nevada, and possibly Yuma, Arizona, because the 727's range with the low altitude and speed would be limited. The Boeing 727 was an important part of his plan. Unlike other jetliners, it had an aft stair that could be lowered in flight. By making the crew fly at a low altitude and speed, he ensured conditions suitable for a parachute jump. At 7:40 p.m., with the ransom and parachutes aboard and the passengers gone, the plane took off from Seattle into the rainy, cold night. It climbed slowly to just under 10,000 feet and turned south. As the jet leveled off, Cooper instructed Tina Mucklow to join the pilots in the cockpit and close the door behind her. Alone in the cabin, he began to prepare. He tied the bag of money around his waist using a piece of parachute cord. He fastened one of the main parachutes on his back and selected a reserve chute to use as a makeshift knapsack for the money. He cut lines from one of the reserve chutes, later discovered to be a non-functional training chute, and used them to secure the bag. He also retrieved something from his briefcase, perhaps additional instructions or tools. What he thought about in those moments remains unknown. Was he calm, nervous, euphoric? Around 8 p.m., as the plane flew over the dense forested terrain of southwestern Washington state near the Lewis River, the flight crew felt a sudden change in cabin pressure. An indicator light on the instrument panel showed that the aft air stair had been deployed. From the cockpit, they could feel vibrations and a slight pitch change as the air rushed up the stair. They asked Cooper if he needed assistance. He replied via intercom, "No." Minutes later, a pressure bump, like someone leaving by the rear, registered. Dan Cooper had gone out the back of the plane into the rain, darkness, and freezing winds. The flight crew closed the aft stair and continued to Reno as instructed. They landed at 11 p.m. The FBI swarmed the aircraft, searching for clues. Agents collected cigarette butts, the bourbon glass, the leftover parachutes, and Cooper's black clip-on tie, which he had removed and left on his seat. This tie would later yield DNA evidence, but at the time, DNA testing did not exist. Meanwhile, search teams from the FBI, local law enforcement, and the military mobilized to comb the rugged wilderness where Cooper had likely landed, an area of dense forests, rivers, and mountains near Ariel, Washington. They battled darkness, heavy rain, and remote terrain. Helicopters and planes flew grid patterns. Ground teams scoured roads and logging trails. Divers searched lakes and rivers. No trace of Cooper, the parachute, or the money was found. It was as if he had disappeared into the night. The FBI codenamed the case Norjack, short for Northwest Hijacking. It became one of the longest and most exhaustive investigations in the Bureau's history. Agents interviewed airline employees, passengers, and anyone who might have seen the hijacker before he boarded the plane. Composite sketches were produced based on witness descriptions. The media frenzy turned the skyjacker into an enigmatic folk hero, and tips poured in from across the country. Early theories suggested that Cooper had a background in aviation or parachuting. He seemed to understand the capabilities of the Boeing 727 and knew how to control the crew without raising panic. Some thought he might have been a paratrooper or an airline employee. However, agents also noticed mistakes. He chose a non-steerable canvas reserve chute. He ignored that the reserve chute he cut up was a dummy with the container sewn shut. These errors suggested he might not have been an expert. Over the next 5 years, the FBI investigated more than 800 suspects. Each lead seemed promising at first, but ultimately fizzled. One of the most notable suspects was Richard Floyd McCoy, who hijacked a Boeing 727 in April 1972, using a similar method and parachuted out with a ransom. McCoy was arrested, convicted, and eventually killed in a shootout with law enforcement after escaping from prison. However, he did not match flight attendants' descriptions of Cooper and was eliminated as the skyjacker. Another suspect, Dwayne Weber, confessed on his deathbed in 1995 to being D.B. Cooper, but there was no physical evidence to support the claim. Other names, Kenneth Christensen, Lynn Doyle Cooper, Robert Rackstraw, surfaced over the years. Each time, investigators found discrepancies. In 2016, an online group of amateur sleuths called the Citizen Sleuths used microanalysis to examine particles on Cooper's tie and suggested he might have worked in a plant manufacturing or testing titanium or stainless steel, industries in the Pacific Northwest at the time. The FBI acknowledged the findings but did not reopen the case. For almost 9 years, there was no physical evidence. Then, in February 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was vacationing with his family on the Columbia River, about 20 miles north of Ariel. While digging in the sand, he found a decaying package containing $5,800 in $20 bills. The serial numbers matched those of the ransom money. The bills were arranged in the same order as they had been given to Cooper, but were badly deteriorated. The discovery reignited speculation. Did Cooper bury the money? Was it washed downstream by floodwaters? Did he die and the money scattered from his container? The location of the find complicated theories about where Cooper landed. No other money has ever been found. Investigators hoped the discovery would lead to new evidence, but extensive searches of the sandbar and riverbanks yielded nothing more. In 1986, the money was divided. Ingram was allowed to keep a portion. The rest went to the insurance company that had reimbursed Northwest Orient and to the FBI as evidence. By 2016, after 45 years of investigation, the FBI officially suspended active investigation of the case, stating that its resources could be better used elsewhere. Nevertheless, agents still accept voluntary tips, and the case file remains open in the sense that credible evidence could prompt renewed inquiries. The mystery continues to captivate writers, filmmakers, and amateur detectives. Cooper's audacious heist, calm demeanor, and vanishing act have inspired songs, books, and movies. He has become a folk hero to some, a symbol of rebellion against authority and corporate power. To others, a dangerous criminal who put lives at risk for money. As you listen, imagine the dark sky over Washington State on that November night. Picture a lone figure stepping out onto a metal staircase, wind roaring past his face, rain lashing his coat. He is carrying 10,000 $20 bills bundled in his bag, knowing that one misstep could be fatal. He leans forward and disappears into the void. Where did he land? Did he survive to spend the money? Or did the cold, wet wilderness swallow him forever? The D.B. Cooper case reminds us that some mysteries remain unsolved despite decades of searching. Perhaps what makes this story enduring is not just the cleverness of the crime, but the space it leaves in our imagination. Human beings are storytellers. We piece together clues and build narratives, even when the facts run out. But for now, there is no need to solve anything. You can let the unanswered questions drift like clouds across your mind and then watch them float away. As the music continues and silence returns, allow yourself to sink deeper into rest. Let each exhale carry away the day's tension. You have heard the story. It no longer needs your attention. Feel your muscles soften, your breath slow. If thoughts arise, imagine them as leaves floating down a stream. Notice them and let them go. Rest in the space between the lines, where quiet and comfort reside. We now move forward into the next part of our journey, continuing through the quiet corridors of true crime history. The stories ahead are not told to shock or overwhelm, but to gently examine the people behind the headlines, the investigations that followed, and the long path to justice in each case. Think of this as drifting from one chapter to another, calmly stepping into the next story as it unfolds. This segment takes us deeper into the late 1970s and 1980s, a period when law enforcement faced crimes unlike anything they had experienced before. The individuals we'll talk about made choices that shaped countless lives, communities, and the nation itself. Rather than focusing on brutality, we'll trace who they were, how authorities pursued them, and how their stories ultimately ended. Allow the narrative to simply pass through your mind, like scenes from a quiet documentary. Let tension slide away as we continue onward, steady and unhurried. Born in Burlington, Vermont in 1946, Theodore Robert Bundy moved frequently in his early years. He grew up believing that his mother was his sister because he was raised in his grandparents' home. From the outside, his life looked ordinary. He attended the University of Washington and worked for a time at a suicide hotline. People who knew him described him as intelligent, articulate, and even charming. Behind his polite smile, however, something dark was brewing. In the mid-1970s, women began disappearing from college campuses in Washington and Oregon. Many of them were young, slender, with long hair. They vanished without a trace. Bundy exploited his good looks and affable demeanor to gain his victims' trust. He would wear a sling or a fake cast and ask women for help loading books into his Volkswagen Beetle. Once they were close enough, he would overpower them. This pattern continued across the Pacific Northwest. Authorities were slow to connect the cases. Bundy relocated frequently, committing murders in at least 5 states: Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Utah, and Florida. In Utah, he was arrested in 1975 after a routine traffic stop revealed burglary tools in his car. Police soon linked him to a kidnapping. Bundy attempted to represent himself at his trials, leveraging his legal knowledge to delay proceedings. Bundy's first escape occurred in June 1977. While being transferred from a courthouse library in Aspen, Colorado, he jumped from a second-story window and disappeared into the Rockies. He was recaptured 6 days later. That December, he escaped a second time by sawing a hole in the ceiling of his cell and climbing into the jailer's apartment. He stole clothes and fled to Florida. There, on January 15, 1978, he attacked students at Florida State University's Chi Omega sorority house, killing 2 women and severely injuring 2 others. Days later, he abducted and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. Bundy was arrested driving a stolen vehicle in Pensacola in February. Fingerprints, witness accounts, and forensic evidence tied him to the Florida crimes. During his trial, Bundy's polished demeanor and self-representation drew national attention. He proposed to his girlfriend Carol Ann Boone in the courtroom. Ultimately, he was convicted and sentenced to death for the murders of Kimberly Leach and the 2 Chi Omega students. On January 24, 1989, Bundy was executed in Florida's electric chair. Before his death, he confessed to killing about 30 women. Investigators believe the real number may be higher. Media coverage transformed Bundy into an unsettling cultural figure. His case sparked debates about violence against women and the glamorization of criminals. In the early 1980s, authorities in King County, Washington, discovered several women's bodies near the Green River. Many victims were young runaways or sex workers. For years, investigators struggled to identify the murderer. Meanwhile, the killings continued. The perpetrator targeted vulnerable women, often picking them up in his truck. He knew the areas around the river intimately. Gary Leon Ridgway, born on February 18, 1949 in Utah, was a quiet, unassuming man. He worked as a truck painter and spent weekends reading the Bible. Neighbors described him as friendly, yet he harbored a deep resentment toward women. Ridgway later claimed he wanted to kill as many prostitutes as he could because he believed he was doing law enforcement a favor. In 1982, the first victims were found. He dumped their bodies in clusters, often returning to the scenes to watch them decompose. For almost 2 decades, detectives interviewed hundreds of suspects. They even questioned Ridgway in 1983, but he passed a polygraph test and was released. It wasn't until 2001 that new DNA technology matched saliva samples taken from Ridgway in 1987 to semen found on 3 victims. He was arrested at a paint shop where he worked. In 2003, Ridgway agreed to plead guilty to 48 counts of murder in King County in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. At his sentencing, he sat impassively as families of the victims spoke. He later confessed to killing at least 71 women, and investigators suspect the real number could be around 90. The Green River case changed how law enforcement approached serial killings. It exposed the vulnerability of sex workers and runaways. Ridgway's plea deal required him to help locate the remains of his victims. He led investigators to remote sites along the river, sometimes breaking down in tears when he saw their discarded belongings. Today, he is serving life without parole. Many families still have no closure. Some victims remain unidentified. The story reminds us that evil can hide behind an unremarkable face. Yet it also speaks to perseverance. Detectives and volunteers never stopped searching. John Wayne Gacy seemed like the picture of a community man. Born in Chicago in 1942, he worked in construction, volunteered in local Democratic politics, and entertained children as Pogo the Clown at neighborhood parties. Beneath that facade, he carried a childhood of abuse. His father was an alcoholic who beat him. As an adult, Gacy tried to earn his father's approval by working hard and helping others, but he also harbored a secret compulsion. Between 1972 and 1978, dozens of young men disappeared around Chicago. Gacy would lure them to his home with promises of work, drugs, or alcohol. Once there, he performed what he called his handcuff trick, convincing victims to let him bind them. He then assaulted and killed them. The disappearances barely made the news because the victims were often marginalized. Gacy stored the bodies in the crawl space beneath his house. When the space filled up, he threw bodies in the nearby Des Plaines River. Neighbors noticed foul odors, but Gacy blamed them on moisture. The investigation began in December 1978, when a 15-year-old boy named Robert Piest vanished after telling his mother he was meeting Gacy about a potential job. Police traced Piest's last location to Gacy's house. After days of surveillance, officers obtained a search warrant. They found human bones under the crawl space. Gacy confessed to killing at least 30 young men. Authorities ultimately discovered 29 bodies beneath his house and 4 in the river. At trial, Gacy's lawyers argued he suffered from schizophrenia. The The jury rejected the insanity defense, and he was convicted. In 1980, Gacy was sentenced to death. He spent 14 years on death row, during which he painted clowns and sold the artwork. On May 10, 1994, he was executed by lethal injection. Gacy's case shocked the country. It illuminated the vulnerabilities of marginalized boys and young men. The image of a serial killer who performed at children's parties in a clown suit became a chilling symbol. Families of the victims carried the trauma for decades. The story also forced law enforcement to develop better systems for tracking missing persons. In death, Gacy's paintings remain controversial. Some see them as macabre curiosities. Others view them as reminders of tragedy. Eileen Wuornos's life story begins with trauma. She was born in February 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Her father was a convicted sexual offender who never met her. She was abandoned by her mother at a young age and raised by her grandparents, who abused her. At 14, she was raped and gave birth to a son, whom she gave up for adoption. Soon after, she was expelled from her home and began hitchhiking across the country. She supported herself through sex work and petty theft. Wuornos longed for connection but often found exploitation. In late 1989, Florida police began discovering the bodies of men along highways. Ballistic evidence linked the crimes. The victims were mostly middle-aged or older men who had been shot with a .22 caliber handgun. Investigators traced some victims' belongings to pawn shops and obtained surveillance footage of a woman and another person pawning items. Witnesses identified Wuornos and her girlfriend, Tyria Moore. Police located Moore and persuaded her to call Wuornos and coax her into confessing. Wuornos was arrested at a biker bar in January 1991. During interrogations, Wuornos claimed she killed the men in self-defense, saying they had assaulted or attempted to assault her while she was working as a sex worker. Prosecutors argued she murdered them to steal their money and vehicles. In 1992, she was convicted of murdering one man and subsequently pled guilty to 5 more murders. In total, she admitted to killing at least 7 men. Wuornos was sentenced to death. In 2002, she was executed by lethal injection. Her case sparked intense debate about violence against women, the death penalty, and the stigma faced by sex workers. Some viewed her as a victim of circumstance, others as a cold-blooded killer. Wuornos's story invites us to consider the intersection of trauma, poverty, and violence. Was she driven by self-preservation, or did she become what she despised? Her life forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about how society treats its most vulnerable members. As we reflect on her story, we can feel empathy without condoning her actions. Empathy for the child she once was, lonely, abused, longing for love, and empathy for the lives she took. There are no simple answers, only a complex mosaic of pain and suffering. We have traveled through 4 difficult stories of deception, violence, and the pursuit of justice. In recounting Ted Bundy, Gary Ridgway, John Wayne Gacy, and Eileen Wuornos, we glimpse the darkness that can reside behind ordinary faces. We also glimpse resilience, investigators who refused to give up, families who fought to be heard, communities that came together to demand change. Remember that the purpose of this journey is not to sensationalize, but to remember and reflect. By speaking these stories calmly and compassionately, we honor those whose lives were taken. Now, let the stories drift away. Allow any tension in your body to melt. Feel your breath moving like gentle waves. With each exhale, release the weight of the past. With each inhale, invite calm. You are safe. You are at rest. Let the music hold you. If sleep comes, welcome it. If thoughts arise, notice them and let them float by like clouds. I will remain with you for a few minutes longer, speaking less and less, allowing music and silence to wash over you. When this session ends, you will continue to rest peacefully. As we move on to our next story, things I want you to remember. You are here to let go, to allow your breathing to slow and your thoughts to drift. This next story takes us to a quiet Northern California town in the early 1990s, a town where children rode their bikes through tree-lined streets and families felt safe leaving their doors unlocked. Find a comfortable position. Feel the weight of your body on the bed or chair. Take a slow breath in and let it out. As the gentle music swells and recedes, imagine yourself in that small town on an autumn evening. Streetlights cast soft pools of light on the pavement. In the distance, crickets chirp and a dog barks once, then settles. The air smells of dry leaves and fireplaces. We begin our story. It was October 1st, 1993, a Friday night in the town of Petaluma, California. 12-year-old Polly Klaas was having a slumber party with two of her best friends. They had spent the evening playing board games and dressing up in Halloween costumes before finally climbing into Polly's loft-style bunk bed. Polly's mother, Eve Nickel, and little sister Annie were asleep in another bedroom down the hall. Outside, the wind rustled through the oak trees. Inside, whispers and giggles faded into drowsy silence. Take a deep breath and imagine the contentment of that moment, the comfort of childhood friendships, and the security of home. Sometime after 10:30 p.m., an intruder silently climbed through an unlocked window into the Klaas home. He was a middle-aged man, tall and bearded, carrying a knife in a bag. He entered the girls' bedroom and startled them awake. In a calm but menacing tone, he warned the girls that if they made a sound, he would slit their throats. He forced Polly and her friends to lie face down on the floor. Working quickly, he gagged them and tied their hands using strips of cloth and what appeared to be pieces of electrical cord. He told the terrified girls that he was only taking Polly to help him collect some valuables from another room, and that he would bring her right back. But he did not. After binding the girls, he led Polly out of the house at knife point and disappeared into the night. Feel the stillness in the house after the door closed. The remaining girls lay on the floor, hearts pounding, listening to their friend being led away. After about 20 minutes, they managed to wriggle free of the makeshift bonds. They tore off their gags and ran down the hall to awaken Polly's mother. Eve, startled from sleep, was confused at first. She even thought the girls might be pulling a prank. But the truth quickly became clear. She grabbed the phone and dialed 911. On the recorded call, her voice trembled with shock. Apparently, a man just broke into our house and took my daughter," Eve told the dispatcher. Police responded within minutes. However, A critical miscommunication meant that an all-points bulletin about the kidnapping was not broadcast across all channels. In the chaos of that night, not every law enforcement unit in the region learned that a child had been taken. Some officers in surrounding areas were unaware of the abduction, a gap that would prove important in the hours to come. News of Polly's abduction spread through Petaluma almost immediately. Within hours, neighbors, friends, and even strangers began to search the area. By the next morning, hundreds of volunteers had joined the effort. In the days that followed, thousands would comb through parks, fields, and creek beds looking for any sign of the missing girl. Local print shops produced more than 1 million flyers, bearing Polly's photograph and a police composite sketch of the suspect, which volunteers plastered on storefront windows and telephone poles across California and beyond. People drove hours from out of town to help. Some volunteers took stacks of flyers with them on trips as far away as Seattle, Chicago, even overseas, determined to spread the word. It's estimated that ultimately millions of posters were distributed, and Polly's smiling face appeared on national TV newscasts every night and even on the cover of People magazine. Petaluma, a small farming community, had become the center of a nationwide story. The community rallied together with extraordinary dedication. A makeshift search headquarters was set up in a donated storefront, and at times 50 to 100 people crowded inside, answering phones, organizing search teams, and faxing flyers around the country. The search even went high-tech for the era. Information and images were shared via computer bulletin boards and modem to reach places that physical flyers might not. A popular San Francisco radio show broadcast live from the Volunteer Center, keeping the case in the public eye, and a crew from the TV program America's Most Wanted arrived to film a segment on Polly's disappearance. Petaluma's residents wore t-shirts that read, "Polly, we love you," underscoring how personally everyone felt this loss. Local businesses donated food and supplies to sustain the army of searchers. Candlelight vigils were held in the town square night after night. Dozens, then hundreds of flickering candles symbolized hope for Polly's safe return. Polly's father, Mark Klaas, stood before banks of microphones, pleading for his daughter's life. Polly has become more than a neighbor in Petaluma. She has become America's child, he said in a statement, reflecting the way people across the country had embraced her cause. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies mobilized on an unprecedented scale. Petaluma Police, Sonoma County Sheriffs, and the FBI pooled their resources. Dozens of officers and agents were assigned to the case. The Klaas home was treated with great care as a crime scene. Investigators collected every piece of potential evidence they could find. A partial palm print was lifted from the frame of Polly's bunk bed, and technicians gathered strands of hair and carpet fibers from her bedroom for analysis. This was one of the first cases in which the FBI employed newly developed technology to gather extensive forensic evidence in a child abduction investigation. Technicians used special tools to capture fingerprints, fibers, and other trace evidence that might identify the intruder. All of these clues were carefully preserved, though, at that point, with no suspect to compare them to, their value remained uncertain. Authorities set up roadblocks on highways and back roads leading out of Petaluma, stopping drivers through the night and into the next day. But the man who had taken Polly slipped through the dragnet. Hope and fear coexisted as days passed with no sign of the girl. Still, the community refused to give up. Mark Klaas went on national television, vowing that he would not rest until his daughter was found. Families tied purple ribbons, Polly's favorite color, around trees, porch railings, and lampposts. Prayer circles and vigil gatherings continued to grow. In front yards and shop windows, signs appeared reading, "We love you, Polly, and bring Polly home." Strangers who had never met the Klaas family openly wept at the thought of what they were enduring. Close your eyes and imagine the soft glow of candles in the dark, reflected in tear-filled eyes. Feel the community's determination, the warmth of their unity, and the ache of their worry. Just a few hours after Polly was taken, in the early pre-dawn hours of October 2nd, a woman named Dana Jaffe noticed a white Ford Pinto stuck in a ditch on her property in rural Sonoma County, near Santa Rosa, roughly 20 miles from Petaluma. The driver was disheveled, appeared intoxicated, and seemed anxious. Something about the scene made Jaffe uneasy. It was very late, and her property was isolated. Seeing a stranger's car bogged down in the darkness was alarming. She phoned the police to report the trespasser. Soon 2 sheriff's deputies arrived. They found the driver, a 39-year-old drifter, trying to free his car. The man reeked of alcohol and gave a sketchy explanation for why he was there. The deputies helped pull the Pinto out of the ditch and briefly questioned him. Because of that crucial missed bulletin, these officers had no idea that a kidnapping suspect might be in their midst. The description of the intruder who took Polly had never reached them. And with no outstanding warrants on the man's record to justify holding him, they let him go on his way. The disheveled stranger drove off into the night, and the deputies, having no reason to suspect a connection to Polly's case, filed a routine report of the incident and departed the scene. Dana Jaffe, however, could not shake her unease about the encounter. In the following weeks, as Polly's disappearance dominated the news, Jaffe kept recalling the man on her property. Something about his eyes and his nervous manner stayed with her. Then, on November 27th, 1993, nearly 2 months after the abduction, Jaffe was hiking on her land when she discovered several discarded items hidden among the trees. A man's dark sweatshirt, a pair of child's red tights, a length of knotted white cloth, and a used condom. Seeing children's clothing where it didn't belong sent a chill through her. "I thought, this is maybe a crime scene," Jaffe later said. She immediately contacted the police again. Detective Larry Pelton of the Petaluma Police Department came out to examine the scene. The moment he saw the knotted white cloth, Pelton felt a surge of recognition. It looked just like the cloth gags described by the girls at Polly's slumber party. Investigators now realized these items might be evidence from Polly's abduction. When Jaffe told Detective Pelton about the disheveled man who had gotten stuck on her property back in early October, the connection grew even stronger. Pelton pulled the old incident report filed weeks earlier and for the first time learned the name of that trespasser, Richard Allen Davis. Imagine the cold feeling that must have washed over Donna Jaffe in that moment. The face of the man in the ditch, the items of clothing appearing in the woods. It all now pointed to a horrifying possibility. She had quite likely crossed paths with Polly's kidnapper on the very night the little girl went missing. It had been a missed opportunity to save Polly one born of miscommunication and tragic timing. The evidence recovered from Jaff's property, the sweatshirt, the red tights, the knotted cloth, and other items, was sent to the FBI crime lab for analysis. Technicians meticulously compared fibers from those items with the fibers collected in Polly's bedroom. Before long, they found a match. Unique fibers from the sweatshirt and tights matched fibers from Polly's carpet and bedding. It was a forensic link between the crime scene and the unknown man on Jaffe's land. At the same time, detectives obtained the old booking records and fingerprints of Richard Allen Davis, the man named in the trespassing report. The partial palm print lifted from Polly's bunk bed was run through the database. In a breakthrough moment, it matched Richard Allen Davis. Investigators also noted that hair strands and carpet fibers taken from Polly's room matched samples associated with Davis. In that instant, the vague description of a tall, bearded man had a real name and face. After nearly 2 months of desperate searching, police finally had a solid suspect. They soon learned that Davis was a career criminal with a long history of violence. He had been raised in difficult circumstances. His father was an alcoholic, and Davis grew up in a troubled home in California's Central Valley. By his teens, he was already stealing, and over the years, he graduated to more serious crimes. In 1976, at age 21, he abducted a young woman at knife point from a Bay Area commuter train station. In 1984, he kidnapped another woman and forced her to withdraw money from a bank at gunpoint. For these and other offenses, he spent years in and out of prison. In fact, Davis had been sentenced to 16 years behind bars for the 1984 kidnapping. But he was paroled early, regaining his freedom just 6 months before the night he crossed paths with Polly. Community members, upon learning this, were outraged. They questioned how someone with such a past was ever allowed back on the streets. Armed with the forensic evidence and Davis's extensive record, investigators moved quickly. On November 30th, 1993, a SWAT team descended on a house in Ukiah, California, where Davis had been staying with relatives. Under the pretext of a parole violation, they arrested him and brought him in for questioning. At first, Davis denied any involvement in Polly's case. He claimed he had an alibi on the night of October 1st and insisted the police had the wrong man. Detectives noticed, however, that he appeared nervous, and as piece after piece of evidence was laid out, the palm print, the fibers, the items from the woods, it became harder for him to maintain his story. The walls were closing in. After hours of interrogation, in the early morning of December 4th, 1993, Richard Allen Davis finally confessed. He admitted that he had indeed slipped through Polly's window, tied up her friends, and abducted Polly at knife point. Confronted with the evidence from Dana Jaffe's property, Davis revealed what had happened on that terrifying night. He claimed that he had driven Polly in his car for a while, then pulled off the road. At some point during the night, within just a few hours of the abduction, he said he strangled her in his car. Whether this occurred before or after the deputies encountered him on Jaffe's driveway is a haunting question. Investigators later wondered if Polly might still have been alive, hidden out of sight during that brief police encounter. Davis told authorities that after killing Polly, he drove north, eventually stopping in a rural area near Cloverdale, about 50 miles from Petaluma, where he hid her body in a thicket under a piece of scrap plywood. He acted alone. There was no accomplice, no ransom demand. It was a tragically random crime committed by a dangerous drifter who had crossed paths with an open window and innocent children. The following day, under heavy guard, Davis led law enforcement officers to the remote site where Polly's remains lay. FBI agent Eddie Fryer later described the eerie drive he took with Davis that night, winding along back roads through dark countryside. In the silence of the patrol car, Fryer gripped the steering wheel and fought back waves of anger as Davis, sitting casually, smoked a cigarette, eerily unfazed by the enormity of what he had done. Finally, they reached a desolate spot among oak trees and scrub brush. There, exactly where he had said, they found Polly. The long search was over, and its outcome was the one everyone had prayed would not come to pass. Polly's body was carefully recovered and later positively identified. She was brought home to Petaluma one last time to be laid to rest by her grieving family. The community that had hoped so intensely for a miracle now shared a collective sorrow. The little girl they had all come to love was gone. Take a moment and let your shoulders soften. Acknowledge the deep sadness of this outcome, but also the somber relief that at least the mystery was solved and Polly had been found. Families, even beyond Petaluma, held their own children a little tighter that night. In the wake of the tragedy, there was comfort in knowing the truth and in seeing the perpetrator brought to justice. Richard Allen Davis was charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances, including robbery, burglary, kidnapping, and attempted lewd acts on a child, making him eligible for the death penalty. The legal process moved deliberately. It took over 2 years for the case to come to trial, as both prosecution and defense prepared their arguments, and the community continued to heal. In the spring of 1996, a jury trial was held in San Jose, moved from Petaluma due to extensive pretrial publicity. The proceedings lasted over a month. In June 1996, the jury returned a verdict. They convicted Davis on all charges. During the trial, Davis often displayed open contempt for the court and the victim's family. At one point, as the guilty verdict was read, he casually extended both of his middle fingers in an obscene gesture toward the Klaas family, seated in the front row. It was a shocking moment, the killer showing no remorse. That wasn't the worst of his courtroom behavior. In September 1996, during the formal sentencing phase, Davis had the audacity to spew a vile accusation. He stood and claimed that Polly had told him something offensive about her own father, a completely baseless and cruel lie meant only to torment the Klaas family. Hearing this, Mark Klaas lunged at Davis in an explosion of grief and anger, determined to silence him for good. Court officers restrained Mark before he could reach the smirking defendant, and they quickly removed Davis from the courtroom. The judge later struck Davis's outburst from the record, and it was clear to everyone that the killer's words were an outrageous fabrication with no evidence whatsoever. In the end, the judge pronounced the expected sentence: death. Davis was sent to San Quentin State Prison to await execution. To this day, he remains on death row. In 2019, the state of California imposed a moratorium on executions, so although he was sentenced to die, in practice, his punishment has been a life spent behind bars. During the sentencing, Mark Klaas also had a chance to address the court. He stared directly at Davis and issued a father's vow. If he ever again met the killer's gaze, Mark hoped that his eyes would be the last eyes Davis ever saw. It was a powerful statement of a grieving parent's desire for justice. Polly's death sent shockwave far beyond her California town. Her case became a catalyst for changes in law enforcement practices and criminal justice policy, not just in California, but across the United States. In the wake of the public outrage over how a repeat felon like Davis had been free to commit such a heinous crime, California voters overwhelmingly approved the 3 strikes and you're out law in 1994. This new law mandated much harsher sentences, often 25 years to life in prison, for anyone convicted of a 3rd felony offense. Polly's case was cited by proponents as a prime example of why the law was needed. Indeed, the California legislature had been considering a similar proposal after another tragic murder in 1992, but it was the public fury over Polly's killer that truly propelled 3 strikes into law. Within a few years, versions of 3 strikes laws were adopted in at least 23 other states, and even the U.S. Congress included a federal 3 strikes provision in a 1994 crime bill. These laws dramatically increased prison terms for repeat offenders, reflecting a wave of tough-on-crime sentiment that swept the country. At the same time, Polly's case prompted intense debate. Many people, including some in Polly's own family, later questioned whether such broad laws truly made communities safer or simply filled prisons. Polly's distraught community also demanded a closer look at how parole decisions are made. "Why was this man out on the street?" was a common cry. State officials conducted reviews of parole practices for violent offenders, and law enforcement agencies improved how they communicate across jurisdictions in critical situations. The outcome of Polly's case painfully underscored the importance of seamless interagency communication. After that, police departments and sheriff's offices in California worked to ensure that bulletins like the one missed on the night of October 1st, 1993, would be broadcast on all channels without delay. Many credit the lessons of Polly Klaas's kidnapping, as well as a similar case in 1996 in Texas, the kidnapping of Amber Hagerman, for spurring the development of the nationwide Amber Alert system, which began in the late 1990s. Rapid public notification and coordinated search efforts have since become standard in child abduction cases, partly because Polly's story showed how crucial time and communication can be. The case also highlighted the value of forensic evidence. The palm print and fiber clues that cracked the case illustrated how vital crime scene work can be, leading the FBI to expand its specialized evidence response teams in the years after. In the midst of their grief, Polly's family channeled their energy into advocacy and helping others. Mark Klaas, along with friends and supporters, established the Polly Klaas Foundation in late 1993, even before Polly was found, to assist in the search and to spread the word nationally. After Polly's death, that foundation transitioned into a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping find missing children across America, and over the years, it has helped thousands of families in their hour of need. In 1994, Mark Klaas also founded the Klaas Kids Foundation, which developed professional search and rescue teams and child safety programs. Klaas Kids has assisted in the searches for more than 1,500 missing persons and has advocated for child safety legislation. Mark Klaas became one of the nation's most visible child advocates, turning his personal tragedy into a mission to protect other children. Yet the legacy of Polly's case is complex. As time passed, her family's views on justice evolved. Polly's two younger sisters, Jess and Annie Nickel, grew up under the shadow of the laws and policies enacted in response to Polly's murder. As adults, they have questioned the fairness of the harsh sentencing laws like 3 strikes that were passed in Polly's name. They point out that such laws contributed to a massive increase in the prison population, including many people sentenced to life for nonviolent crimes, and they have become advocates for criminal justice reform, seeking more community-based solutions to prevent violence. "We don't want our pain to be used to punish anyone else," one of Polly's sisters has said, emphasizing that true justice should be about healing and prevention, not simply retribution. Their stance is a reminder that even in the aftermath of a terrible crime, there can be a push for compassion and thoughtful change. Feel the quiet resolve that can arise from tragedy. Polly's story, though heartbreaking, inspired many people to become more vigilant, more caring, and more active in their communities. Out of the loss came new laws, new methods for finding the lost, and a nationwide network of advocacy aimed at protecting children. The name Polly Klaas will forever be linked not only with a terrible crime, but also with the determined efforts to ensure that nothing like it ever happens again. As you breathe slowly now, let your thoughts wander gently over the details of this story. It is a difficult story, but telling it honors Polly's memory. Remember the strength of the community members who search day and night. Remember the dedication of the investigators who never gave up, and the courage of families like Polly's who turned their grief into action. Every time we recall stories like this, we reaffirm our commitment to protect the vulnerable. We remind ourselves to remain vigilant, yet also to hold on to the belief in the goodness of people, the volunteers, the neighbors, the strangers who refuse to let darkness prevail without a fight. Now, let the music rise a little. Picture a night sky filled with stars above Petaluma, the same stars that shone on that October night in 1993. Let your eyes grow heavy. With each exhale, release any tension and any lingering worries. There is nothing you need to do right now. You're safe to drift. As we move into our next story, we step into another mystery that reminds us how complicated the truth can be. This is a case where the evidence didn't move in a straight line. Instead, it twisted. It contradicted itself, and at times, it almost seemed to be telling completely different stories. It's a disappearance that left investigators divided, families desperate, and the public stunned when the final picture began to come together. A case that proves that even when we think we understand what happened, reality can still turn in a direction no one saw coming. So settle in, take a slow breath, and let's walk carefully into the next chapter of this journey. Maura Murray was a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst when she vanished in February 2004. Born May 4th, 1982, Maura was the fourth of 5 children and grew up in Hanson, Massachusetts. She was known as an overachiever, excelling in both academics and athletics, with a kind heart and a quick wit. In high school, she was a star runner, and her dedication earned her admission to West Point, the prestigious U.S. Military Academy. Mora spent 3 semesters at West Point before deciding to transfer closer to home to study nursing, following in the footsteps of her older sister, Julie. By winter 2004, Mora seemed to be a focused young woman juggling coursework, a campus security job, and a long-distance relationship with her boyfriend, Army Lieutenant Bill Rausch. Despite her bright exterior, Mora had recent struggles that worried her family. A few months earlier, in late 2003, she'd been caught using a stolen credit card to order food, an offense that was due to be dismissed after a period of good behavior. In early February 2004, just days before she disappeared, Mora had an emotional breakdown at work. While on duty at her campus security job, she received a distressing phone call from her older sister Kathleen, who had relapsed into alcohol abuse. The call left Mora in tears and so distraught that her supervisor had to escort her back to her dorm for the night. Mora's family later explained that she was deeply sensitive and hated to disappoint anyone, especially her father, Fred Murray. This emotional episode was one of several stressors weighing on Mora in the lead up to her disappearance. In the weekend just before Mora went missing, more trouble found her. On Saturday, February 7, 2004, Mora's father, Fred, visited her at UMass. That night, Mora borrowed her father's car to attend a campus party. Driving back in the early hours of Sunday, she lost control on a curve and crashed into a guardrail, causing nearly $10,000 in damage to Fred's new car. Though uninjured, Mora was extremely upset. She knew she had likely been drinking and now faced the wrath of disappointing her dad. Fred later said his daughter was quite distraught over the accident. Still, he tried to reassure her that insurance would cover the damages, and he made plans to help Mora fill out the necessary accident report forms that week. Mora's behavior in the following day was uncharacteristic and concerning to those who knew her. On Monday, February 9th, instead of sticking to her normal routine, Mora set a mysterious plan into motion. In the early morning hours, around 3:30 a.m., she submitted a nursing homework assignment online, as if preparing to keep up with coursework. Later that day, she lied to professors, emailing that she needed a week off due to a death in the family. A death that hadn't actually occurred. She also contacted a condo owner in Bartlett, New Hampshire, a place where her family had vacationed before, about renting a condo for a few days, and called an information line about booking hotels in Vermont. No reservations were made, but it appeared Mora was planning a short getaway to the mountains. At 1 p.m., she packed her car with clothes, toiletries, college textbooks, and workout gear, as if she meant to return after a brief trip. She also picked up those accident report forms for her dad's insurance, and even forms to reinstate her driver's license, which had been suspended for prior speeding tickets, suggesting she intended to deal with her responsibilities soon. Before leaving Amherst, Mora stopped at an ATM and withdrew $280, nearly all the money in her account. She then stopped by a liquor store, spending about $40 to buy an assortment of alcohol: vodka, Kahlua, Bailey's Irish Cream, and a box of Franzia wine. Security cameras showed she was alone during these errands. By 4:30 p.m. on February 9th, 2004, Mora Murray had left campus driving north in her old black Saturn sedan, without telling a soul where she was headed. was a cold Monday evening in New England, and Maura's chosen route would take her toward the White Mountains of New Hampshire, a trip of about 2.5 hours, presumably for some time away to clear her head. Around 7:30 p.m. on February 9th, a resident of Woodsville, New Hampshire, heard a loud thump outside her home along rural Route 112. Looking out, she saw a car had skidded off the road and hit a snowbank at a sharp curve. This car was Maura's black Saturn, now sitting damaged and facing the wrong direction in a ditch. The local woman immediately called 911 to report the accident. Moments later, a passing school bus driver, a neighbor named Butch Atwood, came upon the scene and stopped to help. Mr. Atwood found a young woman alone by the disabled car. It was Maura. He noted the car's airbags had deployed, and the girl looked shaken up, but he saw no blood or visible injuries. He offered assistance, even saying, "I'll call the police for you." But Maura begged him not to call the police. She assured him, "No, please don't. I've already called AAA for a tow." This struck the bus driver as odd. The area had no cell phone reception, meaning Maura could not have called for roadside help. Sensing her distress, Mr. Atwood didn't press the issue. He instead told her he would go back to his house nearby and call for help after giving her a few minutes in case she changed her mind. Maura pleaded again that he needn't call anyone, but he gently insisted he would check on her shortly. True to his word, the bus driver drove the short distance home and phoned the police at 7:42 p.m. He reported the single-car accident and noted the young woman driver appeared shaken, but not seriously hurt. That 911 call would be the last known sighting of Maura Murray. By the time a Haverhill police officer arrived on scene at approximately 7:46 p.m., less than 10 minutes after the first 911 call, Maura had vanished. The officer found Maura's Saturn abandoned and locked on the roadside. It had apparently impacted a tree on the driver's side, cracking the windshield and rendering the engine inoperable. The car's left headlight was smashed and the radiator pushed into the fan, but the damage oddly suggested the car might still have been drivable for a short distance. Inside the Saturn, the officer discovered an unsettling scene of spilled items. An empty beer bottle and a damaged box of red wine were on the back seat, with red stains splashed about that looked like wine on the seats and doors. Maura's wallet, bank cards, and cell phone were missing, items she likely kept with her, and they have never been found or used since that night. However, many of her personal belongings remained in the car. The officer noted textbooks, makeup, jewelry, CDs, warm clothing, and Maura's favorite stuffed toy all left behind in the vehicle, along with the blank accident report forms from her recent fender bender. A map with printed driving directions to Burlington, Vermont was also found, hinting at possible destinations Maura had considered. One odd discovery was that a rag from Maura's emergency roadside kit had been stuffed into the Saturn's tailpipe. Maura's father later explained he had advised her to do this if the car was smoking or running poorly, to quiet the noise. But some investigators wondered if it indicated mechanical trouble or even a failed attempt to get the car unstuck. The key fact was that Maura herself was nowhere to be found. There were no footprints visible in the snow around the cars heading into the woods, and no obvious trail of where she went. In a matter of minutes, on a dark, cold night, this young woman had seemingly evaporated into the New Hampshire wilderness. From the outset, Maura Murray's disappearance presented puzzling clues that pulled the investigation in different directions. The first confounding detail was timing. According to the official police log, the first officer didn't arrive until 7:46 p.m. However, a neighbor driving by earlier claimed she saw a police SUV already parked nose to nose with Mora's car around 7:37 p.m., several minutes before the log indicates officers on scene. This witness's account contradicted the timeline and raised questions. Was there an unaccounted police response or another vehicle at the scene before the reported time? Investigators noted the discrepancy, but never fully reconciled it. Such inconsistencies have fueled speculation about what exactly happened in those crucial few minutes. Another perplexing clue came from a contractor who came forward months later. He reported that on the very night of the crash, between 8 p.m. and 8:30 p.m., he saw a young person moving quickly on foot along Route 112, about 4 or 5 miles east of the accident site. He recalled the person was wearing jeans, a dark coat, and a light-colored hood, clothing consistent with what Mora had on. Because he misremembered the date initially, this sighting wasn't reported until he checked work records much later, realizing it might have been Mora. If indeed it was her, it suggests Mora fled the accident scene on foot and covered a significant distance along the road in the dark. But searchers found no other trace of Mora along that highway, and it's unclear whether she could have gotten that far on foot before either being picked up by a passerby or succumbing to the elements. In the immediate aftermath, search dogs were brought in to track Mora's scent. A dog picked up her trace from a glove left in the Saturn and followed it about 100 yards east down the road, in the direction Mora was apparently headed. Then, the scent trail abruptly stopped in the middle of the road. This suggested to police that Mora might have climbed into a passing vehicle, essentially accepting a ride from someone, since the dog lost the trail as if Mora's presence vanished at that point. If a motorist did pick her up, that person never came forward despite widespread media attention. The notion that a good Samaritan or, conversely, someone with bad intentions might have offered Mora a ride became a central theory. The condition of Mora's car and the crash site also raised questions. Initially, police assumed she had simply lost control on a slick curve and plowed into a tree, a fairly common one-car accident. But Mora's family later pointed out inconsistencies. A private accident reconstruction expert examined photos and concluded the damage wasn't entirely consistent with hitting a tree. The Saturn's hood was buckled in the middle and its radiator pushed back, indicating an impact while in motion, yet the pattern didn't match the stout tree nearby. Intriguingly, a broken piece of a car part that didn't belong to Mora's Saturn was reportedly found at the crash scene. It was later identified as possibly coming from a vehicle made by Chrysler, the parent company of Jeep. Adding to that, there was a faint white paint streak on Mora's rear bumper. These clues led some to suspect Mora's car may have been in a minor collision with another vehicle on the road that night. In fact, there was a report, never confirmed, of a suspicious white Jeep seen lingering in the area not far from the crash site. The driver of that vehicle allegedly fled when police approached. Could Mora have been run off the road or bumped by another driver, who then offered her help and harmed her? Or did she perhaps hit her head in the crash, become disoriented, and wander off into the woods alone? The physical evidence left room for either accident or foul play, and each possibility seemed to spawn more questions than answers. Meanwhile, police had to consider Mora's state of mind and preparation for a trip. Inside her dorm back at UMass, officers found that Mora's belongings were packed up as if she planned to be away for a bit. On her bed, inexplicably, was a printed email to her boyfriend that hinted at relationship troubles, a personal note she had left out in the open. Why would Mora tidy her room and pack, yet not tell anyone where she was going? Investigators learned about her recent emotional turmoil, the breakdown at work, the credit card scrape, the car wreck 2 days prior. They theorized that Mora might have been running away from her problems, intending to disappear for a while on her own terms. In fact, initially, authorities treated her as a possible, voluntary missing adult, believing Mora may have wanted to vanish and start fresh, since she hadn't confided her travel plans to anyone. The packed bags, secretive behavior, and no immediate evidence of foul play at the car all pointed to a potential planned getaway. Yet, to those who knew Mora, the notion that she would abandon her family without a word was unthinkable. Her father, Fred, vehemently rejected the idea that Mora chose to disappear, insisting some danger must have found her on that road. In the days after Mora vanished, a massive search effort unfolded in rural New Hampshire. Law enforcement, joined by New Hampshire fish and game officers and volunteers, scoured the woods and back roads around the crash site. They combed the snowy forest with tracking dogs, heat-sensing helicopters, and ground teams on foot. Despite these efforts, no definitive trace of Mora was found. There were no fresh footprints leading into the woods, no discarded clothing or possessions, and no signs of struggle like torn fabric or blood. If Mora had perished in the forest from hypothermia, searchers believed they would have found some evidence, yet nothing turned up in those initial searches. The investigation faced frustrating dead ends and false leads early on. One tantalizing lead came when Mora's boyfriend, Bill Rausch, arrived in New Hampshire to assist. While he was traveling, Bill received a voicemail that briefly lifted everyone's hopes and then deepened the mystery. Bill's cell phone showed a missed call that appeared to come from Mora's number, and it recorded a voicemail of what sounded like a woman faintly sobbing in the background. He was convinced for a moment that it was Mora trying to call him, crying. But phone records traced that call to a prepaid calling card issued to the American Red Cross, not directly from Mora's cell phone. Investigators could not determine who made the call or if the crying voice was actually Mora. It was a cruel tease, a possible sign of life that ultimately led nowhere concrete. Within a week of the disappearance, media coverage began to pick up. Mora's case was unusual and puzzling enough to draw national attention. Here was a young, attractive college student who literally vanished into thin air on a country road. The public was hooked by the mystery, and soon Mora's face was on news broadcasts, missing persons posters, and websites. Her family, desperate for answers, spoke to any outlet they could, painting a picture of a beloved daughter and sister who must be in danger. Tips began to flood in from all over the region. People claimed to have seen Mora in various places: a convenience store in Vermont, a diner in New Hampshire, even far-flung sightings in other states. None of these sightings could be verified. Each tip gave a surge of hope, followed by disappointment when lids fizzled. Police chased down numerous possibilities, from checking if Mora had secretly taken a bus somewhere, to wondering if she tried to hike a trail and got lost, but every path led to a dead end. As weeks turned into months, the official stance on the case shifted. By that summer, with no evidence of Maura anywhere, authorities moved the case into their cold case unit and labeled it suspicious. This meant that while Maura was still officially just missing, investigators now openly acknowledge foul play could be involved. The lack of clues was haunting. It was as if Maura had been plucked off the roadside by a phantom. Both the Murray family and police agreed on one thing. They needed the public's help. They appealed for anyone who had driven Route 112 that night to come forward if they saw Maura or any other vehicles. Did someone see a lone girl walking that evening? Or a car stop to pick up a hitchhiker? Despite these pleas, no credible eyewitness stepped up to fill in the blank. 10-minute window during which Maura disappeared. With the investigation stalled, Maura's case took on a life of its own in cyberspace. It became one of the first internet-fueled true crime mysteries of the social media age, occurring just as online forums and message boards were taking off. Armchair detectives on forums discussed the case endlessly, proposing theories ranging from abduction by a serial killer to Maura staging her own vanishing act to start a new life. The Murray family, while appreciating the interest, often felt overwhelmed by the rampant speculation. In some cases, unfounded rumors spread online, such as baseless accusations against family members or wild stories that Maura was living in Canada under a new identity. The media circus around the case only intensified after a 2009 episode of NBC's Dateline, and later a 2017 documentary series on Oxygen called The Disappearance of Maura Murray. Each retelling added new angles and sometimes amplified unproven claims, which the family had to continually swat down. Among the swirling theories, a few major lines of inquiry emerged as the most plausible explanations: accidental death in the wilderness. One theory holds that Maura, intoxicated and distraught, simply wandered into the freezing woods to avoid police and succumbed to hypothermia. Perhaps she planned to hide for a short time, but the below-freezing February night overcame her. Proponents note her known mental stress and the fact she was unprepared for long exposure. It's possible search teams just missed her body, which may have later been scattered by wildlife. Over time, this theory has felt less likely, since no trace of Maura has ever been found, despite extensive searches and even ground-penetrating radar sweeps of the area. Voluntary disappearance. Another theory suggests Maura orchestrated her own escape, that she intended to start over somewhere new. She had packed her car carefully and lied about a family death, indicating she wanted to get away. Maybe, as some suspect, Maura was facing personal crises, legal issues, academic pressure, relationship troubles, and decided to leave everything behind. In this scenario, she might have had help from a second party who picked her up, or she hitchhiked and someone willingly gave her a ride out of the area. If she is living under the radar, she has impressively never used her identity, bank accounts, or contacted loved ones in all these years. Maura's family finds this theory very painful and unlikely. They insist she would not put them through this kind of agony intentionally. Foul play by a stranger. The Murray family's leading theory today is that Maura fell into the wrong hands after the crash. Perhaps a local predator or a passing motorist offered her help, but had sinister motives. Maura, alone and desperate not to get in trouble, might have trusted someone who seemed friendly. This theory is supported by the fact that her scent and footprints vanished on the road, hinting she got into a vehicle. Sadly, if that driver harmed her, the remote area would have offered cover to do anything and hide evidence. Over the years, there were a few potential suspects under this umbrella, including some locals with criminal history, but no solid evidence has ever identified a particular individual. Encounter with a known person. A less discussed but possible scenario is that Maura arranged to meet up with someone she knew, perhaps a friend or acquaintance, along her route. If so, that person never admitted it. There's no evidence in her emails or calls of such a plan, but it's a loose end investigators kept open. If a known person met her and things went wrong, intentionally or accidentally, it could explain the secrecy. One particular lead gave credence to the foul play theory. Not far from the crash site, roughly 1 mile away, stood an A-frame house that became a focus of suspicion. In the years after Maura disappeared, local rumor whispered that this house might have been a scene of foul play. A man who had rented the house around 2004 was said to act oddly regarding Maura's case. According to private investigator John Smith, who has worked with the Murray family, cadaver dogs were brought into that house in 2006 and alerted strongly in an upstairs closet, signaling the possible presence of human remains at some point. Carpeting from that closet was handed over to police, but whatever forensic tests were done were never made public. The case went cold again until 2016, when Smith and the hosts of a popular Missing Maura Murray podcast re-examined the A-frame house. By then, a new owner allowed them inside. They noticed some suspicious reddish stains on wood panels in that same closet. The team collected wood chips with what looked like blood and had them tested. An expert confirmed the presence of human blood on the samples. Hope surged. Could this be a breakthrough after 12 years? The wood chips were sent for DNA analysis. Unfortunately, the samples were old and degraded. When results came back, they indicated blood from 2 people, at least 1 male, and neither could be matched to Maura. It was a dead end. The blood might have been from an earlier, unrelated incident in the house. This A-frame house lid, while dramatic, ultimately did not answer the question of Maura's fate. Another dramatic moment came in 2018 when an item of interest surfaced from a different direction. Maura's father, Fred Murray, was approached by an anonymous local with a potentially chilling piece of evidence. The man handed Fred a rusty knife, claiming that he found it in his brother's truck and that he suspected his own brother might have been involved in Maura's disappearance. The knife appeared to have what looked like dried blood on it. Fred immediately turned it over to law enforcement. It was an unusual situation, a brother implicating his own sibling, and it fueled rampant conjecture in the community. Police have never announced the results of any testing on that knife. According to Maura's sister Julie, authorities initially even refused to take it, only accepting it after Fred persisted. Julie later said the knife was tested for DNA, but the family has not been told the conclusions. The man who owned the knife, the one indirectly accused, reportedly refused to take a polygraph test when asked about Maura. Yet without more evidence, no charges could be brought. This lid, like so many others, sits in the unsolved file, intriguing but incomplete. Periodically, potential remains have been discovered that raise hopes of closure. In 2019, some bone fragments were found on Loon Mountain, about 20 miles from Mora's crash site. Investigators had the bones analyzed, and for months, the Murray family waited anxiously. The results were bittersweet. The bones did not belong to Mora, and in fact appeared to be historical, dating back decades, perhaps even to the 19th century. While relieved that evidence didn't confirm a tragedy for Mora, the family was crushed to be back at square one. My heart is heavy upon learning that these remains do not belong to my little sister, Julie Murray said in 2021, but we will continue to search for Mora and leave no stone unturned. As the years have passed, Mora Murray's disappearance remains unsolved, but it has not been forgotten. Her family has been steadfast, refusing to let the case fade into obscurity. Mora's father and siblings have organized searches, maintained a website, and kept pressure on law enforcement to keep investigating. They've also worked to separate fact from fiction, countering the more sensational rumors with Mora's true story. In recent years, Julie Murray, Mora's older sister, emerged as a public advocate for the case. She started a podcast in 2024 and a TikTok account to share updates and humanize Mora beyond the headlines. Julie has been candid about the family's frustrations with the original investigation, citing delays and missteps. For instance, she points out that police did not promptly interview some potentially key witnesses. The condo owner Mora called, a classmate who chatted with Mora online days before, even the neighbors nearest the crash site. One glaring oversight, Julie notes, is that no one searched east of the crash the night it happened, the direction Mora was headed on foot. By the time searches did cover that area, any tracks were long gone. These gaps leave the family wondering if crucial clues slipped away in the confusion. Today, more than 21 years later, the Murray family still doesn't have the answers they deserve. Mora's mother passed away, never knowing her daughter's fate. Her father, now in his 70s, continues to hope that he can bring Mora home before he leaves this world. The family's working theory is clear. She was met with foul play at the hands of someone, Julie has said. Both of Mora's brothers agree. They believe a stranger likely pretended to help Mora that night and instead harmed her. I think Mora was taken, her brother Curtis said. She probably got in the car with the wrong person and nothing good came from that. She is most likely dead now. Their father Fred has echoed that sentiment with sorrow and certainty. I strongly suspect foul play. That is not even a question in my mind. Yet, notably, no evidence conclusively proving foul play has ever surfaced. It remains a theory supported by circumstance and intuition, but not by a smoking gun. In the quiet of their hearts, some family members also acknowledge the uncertainty. What if by some miracle Mora is alive out there? Over the decades, there have been no verified sightings, no bank traces, no contact, nothing. If she had lived, Mora would be in her early 40s now. In 2024, on the 20th anniversary of the case, the FBI released an age-progressed image of Mora, projecting how she might look as a middle-aged woman. It was a haunting reminder that time marches on, even when a loved one is frozen in memory at 21. It is our hope that this anniversary brings renewed attention that might lead to justice and closure, the New Hampshire Attorney General announced. Tips still trickle in each year around the February 9th milestone. With advances in technology, the family is optimistic that even the tiniest scrap of evidence, a fragment of DNA, a chance confession by someone, could break the case open. Until then, they wait and remember. In the community of online sleuths and among true crime followers, Maura's case has become a cautionary tale. It highlights how a person can disappear between one heartbeat and the next, leaving behind a trail of questions but very few answers. It also shows the double-edged sword of publicity, the outpouring of help and information, but also the noise of speculation that can obscure the truth. Through it all, the Murray family has shown extraordinary grace. They celebrate Maura's life each year, talk about her sense of humor, her dimples and beautiful smile, and the dreams she had of helping others as a nurse. In their private moments, they have surely grappled with despair. Yet in public, they remain composed and focused on finding the truth. As we conclude this unsettling story, we are left with a collage of fragmented images. A wrecked car on a cold night, a pair of footprints that end abruptly on a lonely road, a faded missing poster hanging in a small-town police station. Maura Murray's disappearance is a mystery full of paradoxes, meticulously planned, yet utterly unpredictable in its outcome. No evidence of crime, yet no proof of safety. It reminds us that sometimes the answers do not come quickly, or ever. And so, in a tone of quiet reflection, we think of Maura and of her family. We imagine the snow falling gently in the New Hampshire woods on that February night, covering whatever secrets lie beneath. And we hold on to a sliver of hope that one day a clue will emerge from the darkness and the long wait for answers will finally end. You are here to let go, to allow your breathing to slow and your thoughts to drift. This next story takes us to a quiet Texas suburb in the mid-1990s. A warm summer evening descends on San Antonio. Streetlights flicker on as the sky fades from gold to dusk. In the distance, cicadas hum their nightly chorus. Children pedal their bikes home, and a lone basketball bounces on a neighborhood court. Find a comfortable position. Feel the weight of your body supported beneath you. Take a slow, deep breath in and let it out. As the gentle music swells, imagine yourself on that tree-lined street in June 1994. The air is still and warm. A 13-year-old boy finishes a game of basketball with friends at the corner park and waves goodbye. He walks into the twilight toward home, the last traces of daylight guiding his way. We begin our story. Nicholas Nicky Barkley was a 13-year-old boy living with his family in San Antonio, Texas. He was spirited and troubled, known for mischievous behavior. In fact, Nicholas had minor run-ins with the law, petty theft, and scuffles that led to a juvenile court hearing scheduled for June 14th, 1994. But Nicholas would never appear at that hearing. On June 13th, 1994, the day before his hearing, Nicholas spent the afternoon playing basketball with friends at a neighborhood park. As dusk approached, he placed a call home. He asked his mother or older brother for a ride back, but his brother told Nicholas that their mother was sleeping after a night shift and couldn't come. Nicholas was told to walk home instead. It wasn't far, just a quiet walk through familiar streets. So as the evening settled in, Nicholas set off on foot. He never arrived home. That night, the Barclay family realized Nicholas was missing. Panic and confusion set in. Neighbors helped search the dimly lit streets and nearby yards. The police were notified, and an alert went out for a missing child. But there were no witnesses, no signs of struggle. It was as if Nicholas had vanished into the warm Texas night. Close your eyes and imagine the uncertainty of that moment. A mother dialing every friend's number in desperation. A porch light left on until dawn, hoping to guide a lost boy home. In the days and weeks that followed, search parties combed the area. Volunteers taped missing child flyers to lampposts. Police checked local hangouts and alleyways. Summer turned to fall with no sign of Nicholas. Then, 3 months after he disappeared, a strange tip briefly raised hope. Nicholas's older half-brother, Jason, called police and claimed he saw Nicholas trying to sneak into their garage one night. According to Jason, the boy fled when spotted. Police rushed to investigate, but no trace of Nicholas was found. In time, authorities came to doubt Jason's story. It seemed likely born of stress or perhaps something darker. With no leads, Nicholas's case went cold. The family was left in painful limbo, clinging to the faint hope that Nicholas might still be alive somewhere. 3 years passed. The date was now October 1997. Late one night, law enforcement in Texas received an astonishing overseas call. A youth shelter in Linares, Spain reported that a scared, disoriented teen had turned up there, and he was claiming to be Nicholas Barclay, the missing boy from San Antonio. The caller, who spoke with urgency, said the boy had escaped from a child sex trafficking ring that had abducted him years ago. The teen purportedly described unimaginable abuse. He had been kept in captivity and tortured, which even altered his appearance. News of this miraculous reappearance electrified Nicholas's family. After 3 long years, a glimmer of hope. Nicholas was alive, in a safe place, asking to come home. Nicholas's older half-sister, Carrie, could hardly believe it. She phoned the shelter in Spain, and when a soft, hesitant voice came on the line, her heart pounded. "My God, Nikki, is that you?" Carrie asked in shock. A muffled reply came, "Yes, it's me." On the phone, Nicholas's mother, Beverly, was overwhelmed. She'd endured sleepless nights and private anguish since 1994. Now, against all odds, her son was found. Beverly was described as dumbfounded and blown away by the news. Carrie immediately volunteered to go bring her brother home. Within days, Carrie flew across the ocean to Spain, full of nervous anticipation. Imagine her mindset on that journey. Hope fighting with doubt, excitement clouded by fear. She had never been abroad before, and now she was walking into a foreign shelter to identify a brother who had been missing for years. When Carrie arrived at the shelter, officials led her to a pale, slight teenager bundled in a scarf, hat, and sunglasses. The boy's hair was dark and his eyes were brown, details that made Carrie pause, since Nicholas naturally had light blonde hair and blue eyes. But the boy flinched from the light and explained in a trembling voice that his captors had changed his eye color by chemical torture. He said years of abuse had also affected his speech, giving him an unfamiliar accent. It was a bizarre story, almost impossible to imagine, but Carrie's emotions were running high. She desperately wanted to believe this nightmare had a happy ending. The teen knew personal details about the Barclay family, mentioning relatives by name. He even had a crude tattoo on his hand in the same spot where Nicholas once had one. In that emotional moment, Carrie's heart took over. She rushed forward and embraced the young man, tears in her eyes. Yes, she believed. This was her long-lost brother, Nicholas. With Carrie's identification, both Spanish and American authorities accepted the boy as Nicholas. Paperwork was hastily arranged. After all, it seemed unheard of that someone would pose as a missing child, especially with a family member vouching under oath that it was him. The U.S. Embassy in Madrid issued the necessary documents, and soon the Barkley boy and his sister were on a plane home to Texas. During the flight, the young man grew anxious and agitated. Carrie tried to comfort him as he whispered that he feared the plane might crash, perhaps a reflection of guilt or panic over the deception underway. But the long flight continued safely through the night, carrying them toward an emotional reunion. On October 18, 1997, a plane from Europe landed in San Antonio. At the airport gate, Nicholas's family gathered in tense excitement. Picture the scene: airport fluorescents shining on tearful faces, a trembling mother, an anxious sister, and a small cluster of relatives waiting to glimpse a boy they thought was gone forever. When the passengers began to file out, a slight teenager in a baseball cap and sunglasses appeared at the end of the ramp. Carrie was at his side, guiding him forward. Nicholas's mother, Beverly, stood back at first, eyes wide in disbelief. The young man's face was mostly hidden by the cap and dark glasses. He wore gloves that covered his hands, perhaps to hide the fading makeshift tattoo. For a split second, a silence fell. Then the family stepped forward hesitantly. Could it really be him? The boy's features were more mature, his posture timid, but after an uncertain moment, relief and joy overcame doubt. Relatives embraced him one by one, crying tears of joy and murmuring how much he'd been missed. Beverly finally let herself accept that her son was home. She wrapped him in a hug, though those closest recall she seemed strangely reserved, not as excited as you'd expect. Perhaps it was shock, or an intuitive hesitation. Nonetheless, that night, the Barkleys took Nicholas home, trying to restart a life interrupted by tragedy. Over the next days and weeks, the family did their best to fold Nicholas back into their lives. He moved in with Beverly, who by then lived in a modest apartment and was battling to overcome her drug addiction. The young man was quiet, even withdrawn, which everyone understood given the trauma he described. He spent a lot of time alone or studying family photo albums and home videos, as if trying to reclaim lost memories. Family members noticed inconsistencies. He didn't quite remember certain childhood events, and he sometimes spoke English with an odd accent. But each time, he had ready explanations. Unimaginable abuse had changed him, he said, making him forgetful, wary, and different. Beverly and Carrie reminded themselves that after what he'd been through, of course he would seem like a different person. They were just grateful to have him back. From time to time, though, Beverly would catch herself staring at the young man's face in the glow of the TV. Something felt off. A mother's intuition whispered that this was not quite her son. She struggled with that feeling. Was it simply that Nicholas had been broken by years of abuse? Or was her gut sensing a terrible truth? Late at night, Beverly would smoke a cigarette and try to silence her doubts. She told herself she was being paranoid, that trauma had altered Nicholas's behaviors. After all, she thought, who would lie about something so cruel? By November 1997, a few weeks into Nicholas's return, media attention on the case was growing. A story this incredible, a missing child found half a world away, drew reporters eager to interview the family. One day, a crew from a TV program called Hard Copy came to the Barclays' door, accompanied by a local private investigator named Charlie Parker, TheGuardian.com. Parker had been hired by the show to get the inside scoop on Nicholas's kidnapping and rescue TheGuardian.com. As the camera rolled, Parker quietly observed the slender teenager who claimed to be Nicholas. Parker was a seasoned investigator, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, known around town for his disguise, gadgets, and tenacity. Something about the boy struck him as odd. The accent didn't sound Texan at all. It had a vague European lilt. The boy's manner was polite but distant, unlike the feisty 13-year-old Nicholas Parker remembered from old reports. And there was one more thing Parker couldn't shake: the ears. During the interview, Parker kept glancing from a framed photo of young Nicholas on a shelf to the teenager sitting in front of him. He asked the cameraman to zoom in on the boy's ears on film. Later, Parker would compare that footage to Nicholas's photo. The ears didn't match. Their shape was different, like two different fingerprints. Parker's suspicions grew. He dug further. Nicholas's once blue eyes were now brown. Could eye color be altered by trauma or chemicals? He called an ophthalmologist and was told emphatically no. Linguists told him that even after years abroad or in captivity, a Texas boy should not permanently lose his native accent. Piece by piece, the evidence was mounting in Parker's mind that this young man was not Nicholas Barclay at all. Parker discreetly alerted the authorities and the family to his findings. At first, Nicholas's family was upset by the investigators' claims. They could not believe someone would fake being their son, and they insisted they truly thought it was him. But the seed of doubt was planted. FBI agents took notice and launched a quiet inquiry of their own. Imagine the emotional turmoil in that household during those days. Carrie and Beverly had allowed themselves to feel joy and relief for the first time in years. And now whispers of deception threatened to yank that hope away. It was almost too cruel to consider. The family tiptoed around the young man, unsure of what to believe. And in his bedroom, the 23-year-old imposter who had been living as Nicholas Barclay was starting to feel the walls closing in. In early 1998, the FBI obtained a court order to definitively verify the teenager's identity. They collected a blood sample and fingerprints from the young man staying with the Barclays. The samples were rushed to a lab, comparing them against Nicholas Barclay's records. The truth could no longer hide. The fingerprints did not match Nicholas at all. The boy was, in fact, a 23-year-old Frenchman named Frédéric Pierre Bourdin, a serial imposter wanted by Interpol. He had a history of assuming false identities, often those of missing children, to slip into shelters and families across Europe. Bourdin's elaborate ruse had duped everyone for nearly 5 months, from Nicholas's own family to international authorities. On a cold day in March 1998, FBI agents and local police arrived to arrest the imposter. Frédéric Bourdin did not resist. In that moment, he dropped the charade and spoke in a natural, deep voice. "I know I am Frédéric Bourdin," he admitted calmly as they took him away. The Barclays' world was upended yet again. Carrie had a nervous breakdown after learning the truth. The emotional whiplash of losing her brother twice was devastating. Beverly was left reeling and furious. The hope that had sustained them was cruelly snatched away. Frederic Bourdin was charged with perjury and passport fraud for his deception. In September 1998, he stood in a San Antonio courtroom and pleaded guilty. The judge, noting the heartless cruelty of Bourdin's scam, giving a grieving family false hope and then shattering it, likened his conduct to murder of the family's peace. Bourdin tried to explain that he had done it seeking love and affection, but this time no one was sympathetic. He was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, far above the usual guidelines for his offenses. The real Nicholas Barkley, of course, was nowhere to be found. Bourdin did not, or could not, shed any light on the boy's true fate. His impersonation of Nicholas had simply been another opportunistic con. He had spotted Nicholas's missing poster in Spain and decided to adopt the boy's identity on a whim. It was a chilling reminder that not every miracle is what it seems. As Bourdin was led out in handcuffs, Beverly and Carrie were left with a deep, lingering question. What really happened to Nicholas? With Bourdin exposed and behind bars, the investigation turned back to Nicholas's original disappearance. The FBI and local detectives began to re-examine the 1994 case with fresh eyes. They couldn't help but wonder, why had the Barkley family so readily accepted an obvious impostor? Could it be that some part of them knew he wasn't Nicholas from the start? And if so, why would they go along with such a lie? One disturbing theory emerged. Perhaps the family had been hiding a dark secret about Nicholas's fate. Investigators interviewed Nicholas's mother, Beverly, intensely. They asked if she knew where Nicholas was, or if someone in the family had harmed him back in 1994. Beverly vehemently denied it. She even agreed to undergo multiple polygraph tests, lie detector exams, to prove her truthfulness. On 2 tests, she appeared to pass, but on a 3rd try, Beverly failed. The machine indicated deception when she denied knowing Nicholas's whereabouts. At that, Beverly became angry and distressed. She stormed out of the interview, outraged that anyone would accuse her of hurting her own child. She insisted the polygraph result was a fluke, possibly skewed because she was on medication at the time. I worked my ass off to raise my kids. Why would I do something to my kids? She later protested in an interview, her voice breaking. Authorities found no hard evidence against Beverly beyond the inconclusive lie detector results. Attention then turned to Nicholas's half-brother, Jason. Jason was the last person to speak to Nicholas on the day he vanished, telling him to walk home. And he was the one who claimed to see Nicholas 3 months later, a claim that seemed dubious. By 1997, Jason had been struggling with drug addiction, though he was reportedly trying to get clean. Investigators noted that Jason showed little interest in seeing Nicholas during the 5 months the impostor lived with the family. An odd detail, given a brother's sudden return from captivity. An FBI agent recalled how Jason's answers felt evasive and grudging when asked about the reunion. Suspicion grew that Jason might know more about Nicholas's disappearance than he admitted. One theory was that back in 1994, an argument or accident involving Jason could have led to Nicholas's death, and the family perhaps covered it up. This would explain why they wanted the impostor to be Nicholas. It allowed them to avoid facing grim truth. A private investigator, Charlie Parker, even outright accused Jason of murder in a tense conversation, saying, "I think you did it. I don't think you meant to, but you did," while looking Jason in the eye. Jason said nothing in response, simply staring back, which only fueled Parker's suspicions. However, before any resolution could be reached, tragedy struck. In late 1998, just months after these interviews, Jason died from a drug overdose. Some who knew him wondered if it was truly accidental or a burdened young man's escape from guilt. With Jason's death, the investigation into Nicholas's disappearance hit a devastating dead end. Authorities had no physical evidence, no eyewitnesses, and now no primary suspect. They cannot determine what happened to Nicholas, whether he had run away, been abducted by a stranger, or fallen victim to foul play at the hands of someone he knew. The case went cold once more. Today, Nicholas Barkley would be a grown man in his 40s if he were still alive. But in truth, no one knows whether he survived beyond that summer day in 1994. His disappearance remains unsolved, an aching void for his family, and an enduring mystery. The impostor, Frédéric Bourdin, served his 6-year prison sentence and was released in 2003. Bourdin was deported back to Europe, where, remarkably, he continued impersonating various missing or orphaned teenagers for several more years. He earned the nickname the Chameleon for his uncanny ability to assume new identities. Eventually, Bourdin married and started a family of his own, claiming he'd left his deceptive ways behind. Yet, when asked if he had truly changed, he admitted quietly, "No, this is who I am." Take a slow breath in and out. Let these final facts settle in the silence. This story, as unsettling as it is, carries no neat conclusion. Instead, it leaves us with reflections on desperation and hope. A family's desperation for a miracle was so profound that it blinded them to the inconsistencies before their eyes. A con artist's desperation for love led him to weave an outrageous lie. And behind it all, a boy named Nicholas remains lost, his true fate unknown. Feel the weight of that uncertainty, and then allow it to gently dissolve. Tragedies do not always resolve with clear answers. In the stillness of this moment, we can acknowledge the sorrow without becoming lost in it. When you're ready, take another deep breath. Know that in remembering Nicholas's story tonight, we honor his memory and the resilience of those who loved him. The room is quiet now. Only the soft hum of music remains. You are safe here. Let your thoughts ebb like a fading echo. Slowly, peacefully drift into rest.
Thank you.